Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, we would like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children. Winella woke up one morning, and she was laying in bed. She was enjoying the fact that the covers were so warm. She did not feel like getting up yet. She laid there for a few minutes, and as she laid there, she thought about the fact that it was not a school day. She did not have to go to school. And she thought about what she would do with the day, and she decided that it had really been far too long since she had been over to her grandma's house. Now, as you know, Winella's grandma lives right next door to her. And
Tracy also does.
Yes. Winella's grandma, if you walk out Winella's front door and turn left, that's Tracy's house. And if you walk out of Winella's front door and turn right, the next house is her grandma's house. Well, just as Winella's house is very special, Winella's grandma's house is very special too, although in different ways.
What color is her grandma's house?
Well, her grandma's house is white, with blue shutters on the windows. And its roof is sort of a dull, rusty red color.
That really is special.
It is. It is indeed. The most special thing about Winella's grandma's house, though, is that Winella's grandma and grandpa live there, because they're pretty special people. So Winella decided that she was ready to get up, and she decided that what she was going to do with her morning was go visit her grandma. So she got dressed, and she found some pretty clothes to put on, because her grandma always liked to see her looking pretty. And she put her hair in a ponytail, and then she slid down the slide to the downstairs in order to get breakfast. Now that morning for breakfast, Winella felt she was sort of in a hurry, so she got two things for breakfast. She got an apple and a spoonful of peanut butter. And she very much liked to take a bite of apple and then take a little peanut butter and chew them up, and then take another apple and another bite of peanut butter and chew them up. She did a good job of eating. She ate very quickly and drank her milk. She had always liked the combination of apple and peanut butter together. Then she told her mommy she was going over to her grandma's. She went outside and walked next door. She knocked on the door, but nobody
Was her mommy even up yet?
Oh yeah, her mommy was up. She walked out front door, walked over to her grandma's house, knocked on the door, but nobody answered. So Winella pressed the button for the doorbell. The doorbell at Winella's grandma's house, when you press it, goes like this. Somebody's at the door! Winella waited a minute, and still nobody came. So she tried again, and this time she was a little impatient, so she pressed the button several times. She pressed it and held it. Somebody's at the door! Somebody's at the door! Somebody's at the door! Winella's heard footsteps, and then the door opened, and her grandpa was standing there. He said, "Well, hello, Winella." "Hi, Grandpa," she said. "I came over to see you and Grandma." He said, "Oh, well, Grandma's not here today. She is off at the soup contest." "She went to the soup contest?" said Winella. "Oh, well, not the big soup contest," her grandfather said. "The little one that you have to win in order to get into the big soup contest." "Oh," said Winella. "Does she have any leftover soup? Did she leave any?" Her grandpa said, "Yeah, Winella's grandma made the best soup in the world." At least that's what Winella thought. And her grandma had won a lot of soup contests, so apparently some other people thought that way too. She said, "Can I come over and play this morning, Grandpa, and then maybe we could have some of Grandma's soup for lunch?" He said, "Sure. I was just downstairs working on my train." Winella said, "Oh, excellent. Can I help you work on your train?" Her grandpa said, "Of course." Now, a lot of people have little model trains in their basement, or someplace else in their house. You may have seen them, the little trains that you turn on and you can watch them run around. Well, Winella's grandpa's train was not like that. Winella's grandpa's train was huge. It took up his entire basement, and their house had a very big basement. And the train cars were not as big as real train cars. They were about as big as each car was about as big as a big wheel. So you could actually sit in the train and ride in it. So Winella went down and she saw that her grandpa was working on the engine.
That is huge.
And he said, well, I've just got a few adjustments to make on this engine, Winella. While I'm working on this, would you like to check the waterfall? It hasn't been working very well. And Winella said, sure. And see, in addition to the train, her grandpa had set up all sorts of scenery around the tracks. There was a waterfall that the train went behind. There was a tunnel that the train went through. And there were towns that you could stop. And little pretend people would come out and get on and off the passenger cars and would bring mail to the mail car. And sometimes they would herd cattle onto the cattle car, put their cars onto the automobile car. So Winella was looking forward to having a ride.
How would they get their cars on?
They drove them on. They're little cars because they're just little pretend people. But anyway, Winella went over to the waterfall. She looked at it. It was only a trickle of water. She climbed up the short little fake mountain that the waterfall came over, and she looked at the top. The lake at the top of the mountain was filled by a little hose nozzle. And as Winella looked at it, she could see that something was plugging it up. She stuck her finger down in it and tried to pull on the something, but it just wouldn't pull out. Winella said, there's something stuck in here, Grandpa. He said, well, go get the pliers and see if you can get it unstuck. She could hear him tinking and tanking and making little adjusting, ratcheting, and sort of wrenching kind of noises on the engine. A pliers is a thing that has two sort of teeth to it, and it has handles back here. When you squeeze the handles, it squeezes the plier shut, so you use it to grab onto things real tightly. Remind me and I'll show you some. So anyway, Winella went to get the pliers, and she stuck it down inside the hose nozzle and used it to grab the something that was plugging up the hose. She yanked it out, and she could see that it was a ring. She thought, well, that's funny. She brought it down and showed it to her grandpa. She said, Grandpa, this ring was stuck inside the hose. He said, that's funny. Wonder where that came from. He said, well, do you like it? She looked at it. She said, I do like it, Grandpa. He said, well, you can keep it. Thanks, Grandpa, she said, and she gave him a hug. She put the pliers back where they went and looked back at the waterfall. Now that the hose nozzle was unplugged, the waterfall was falling over the side of the mountain with a lovely little tinkling noise. She slipped on the ring that her grandpa had given her. It made her feel sort of warm. And she thought, that's odd. She took the ring off, and the warm feeling went away. She put it back on, and the warm feeling came back. She thought, this is a very unusual ring. Her grandpa called her just about then and said, okay, Winella, it's all ready to go. Pick a car. Winella walked along the train. There was a blue passenger car and a red passenger car. There was the automobile car. There was a mail car. There was a automobile car, and there was a caboose at the very back. Well, Rebecca, if you were Winella, which car would you ride in?
I would ride in the blue car.
That's what Winella did. She sat down in the blue car. Her grandpa said, all aboard! And then he let Winella press the button on the side of her car that blew the train whistle. Hoo, hoo. And then her grandpa sat down in the engine, and he twisted a little knob, and it went and the cars sort of all gave a little jerk, and then they began to slowly move forward. And Winella pressed the button again. Whoo, whoo. The train began to move along. It went through a tunnel, and Winella blew the whistle again. There was an echoing sound because it was in the tunnel. Whoo. And then they came out the other side, and they were going behind the waterfall. And her grandpa looked back and said, you did a great job getting that fixed. It looks great now. She said, thanks, Grandpa. And then they were coming to the first town. They stopped, and some little pretend people came out, and they were not getting on the train. They were going to the mail car to mail a letter. And Grandpa said, "Oh, would you go back and take care of the mail car, Winella?" She said, "Sure, Grandpa." So she rushed back and sat down in the mail car. And the people came to give her their letters. And she reached out to take them. And when she reached out to take the letters, they handed them to her. And then they saw her ring and they said, "Oh." And they went down on one knee and they bowed to her and they said, "Thank you for collecting our mail, Your Majesty." And Winella said, "What are you talking about? I'm just Winella." They said, "No, you have the ring of the train queen on. And so you are the queen of the entire train set." Winella said, "Cool." She said, "Well, you may go now." And they got up and they went back to their town. She said, "Grandpa, I'm the train queen." He said, "That's nice, Winella." He said, "Are you going to ride back in the mail car or you want to come back up to the passenger car?" She said, "No, I sort of like it in the mail car. I'll stay back here." He said, "Okay, on the next part there's a mail bag. You have to get off." She said, "Okay." The train started again. And her grandfather rang the bell. Ding, 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 as they pulled out of the town. Well, as they were going along, Winella got the hook out of the bottom of the mail car. Because some towns the train wasn't scheduled to stop in, and so they just put their mail in a bag, and the bag was held out on a post by the side of the train. And as you went by, the person in the mail car had to hold out the hook and hook the bag and pull it into the train. It was sort of hard, and Winella liked doing it. It was a challenge. As the train was going along, he said, "Here it comes, Winella." She leaned over the side of the mail car and looked. She could see the bag getting closer. It was gray, and she could read on the side of it. It said mail. She stuck the hook out, and she thought that she was going to miss because she wasn't leaning out quite far enough, but she leaned out just a little bit further just as the bag went by, and whoop, she felt it. She hooked it, and then she pulled it into the mail car. He said, "Good job, Winella." "Thanks, Grandpa." She put the bag down in the bottom of the mail car, and then the train was slowing down at the other town. Well, she could see a big crowd by the side of the tracks, and her grandpa said, "Well, I wonder what's going on today." And when the train pulled in, a band started playing, and there were people with signs saying, "Welcome, Train Queen." And there was a mayor there of the town to give a speech, and he gave a speech while the train was stopped, talking about how it had been a long time since there had been a train queen, and that they were very honored that the train queen had come to their town. And then he asked Winella to give a little speech, and Winella said, "Well, I've never been a train queen before, and I didn't know I was going to be one when I fixed the waterfall." And everyone said, "Ooh, the queen fixed the waterfall! Long live the queen!" And her grandfather grinned from the train and yelled, "Long live the queen, Winella!" And then Winella smiled at everybody and gave her best queen wave, and she got back into the red passenger car this time because that was the one just behind her grandpa. And then he started the train up, and he let her reach up past him and ring the bell. Ding, 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 woo, woo. And they pulled out of the station, and they climbed up to the top of the mountain at one end of the train track. It was a short mountain, really, because it had to fit in the basement. And then they went down the other side. And then they were back at the train house that was right next to the stairs up out of the basement. And Winella and her grandpa got off, and they left the train to cool, and they went upstairs to have some of her grandma's famous broccoli, cheddar, bean soup. And they had it with some warm toast and with a little bit of peanut butter on it. And Winella was very happy.
Peanut butter on soup?
On toast, not on the soup. That would be weird. And Winella
Peanut butter
and
on
her
soup would be yucky.
Yes, it would. Winella and her grandpa talked about what a lovely train ride they'd had.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was created by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it or leave a review on your podcast provider. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and you can also find us on most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.